How fine is the line between a harmless scare and true, irreversible terror. On Halloween, we willingly blur that line, inviting the ghouls and ghosts of our imagination out to play. We revel in the fright, safe in the knowledge that it's all just a performance. But what happens when the performance becomes real? What happens when the prop knife is replaced with a real one? The fake blood is no longer fake, and the dummy hanging from a tree is, in fact, not a dummy at all. This is the story of a Halloween prank in the small town of Oakhaven. A prank designed to be the stuff of legends, which tragically became just that. The town of Oakhaven lived for Halloween. Each year, as October draped the world in shades of amber and rust, the town square transformed into a labyrinth of delightful dread. For its famous haunted trail, the centerpiece, the grand finale of the trail, was always the ancient, sprawling oak tree that stood in the heart of the square. For the Halloween of 2012, the honor of creating the finale fell to 17-year-old Leo Carter. Leo was a showman, an illusionist of suburban terror, known for pranks that were so elaborate they bordered on performance art. This year, he promised the town a spectacle they would never forget. His plan was audacious, a live-action hanging. As visitors completed the haunted trail, they would emerge into the square to witness a cloaked figure being hoisted into the air, kicking and struggling before falling limp, silhouetted against the harvest moon. Of course, it was all to be a trick. Leo had spent weeks designing a complex harness and release system, ensuring his safety while maximizing the shock value for his audience. He was meticulous, obsessed with every detail, convinced that this prank would be his masterpiece, the one that would cement his legacy in the annals of Oakhaven Halloween lore. Halloween night arrived on a wave of cold, crisp air, and the excited chatter of costumed children and adults. The town square was a sea of ghouls, witches, and superheroes, all making their way through the haunted trail. Leo, dressed as a grim, hooded executioner, was in his element, a mischievous glint in his eye as he prepared his grand illusion. His best friend, Maya, nervously checked the harness for the 10th time. She had always been the cautious counterweight to Leo's reckless ambition. And something about this particular stunt filled her with a sense of unease she couldn't quite shake. As the first large group of spectators filtered out of the trail's exit, the show began. A drum roll echoed from hidden speakers. Spotlights converged on the ancient oak tree. Leo, now playing the part of the victim, was dragged to the center by other volunteers. The noose was placed around his neck. The crowd, a mix of teenagers and families, watched with a captivated thrill. This was what they came for, the safe, controlled fear that Halloween promised. The lever was pulled, the platform dropped, and Leo was jerked into the air, his body thrashing wildly at the end of the rope. The initial reaction was exactly what Leo had hoped for. A collective gasp, followed by nervous laughter and applause. The realism was astounding. His struggles were so convincing, his choked gasps so authentic. But as seconds stretched into a full minute, the applause began to falter. The laughter died in people's throats. His movements became less theatrical, more frantic, then weaker. And then they stopped altogether. He just hung there, a limp, silent shape swaying gently in the autumn breeze. A woman in the front row screamed, a raw, piercing sound that sliced through the festive atmosphere and signaled that something had gone horribly, unforgivably wrong. The chaos was instantaneous. The festive music cut out, replaced by a cacophony of panicked shouts and crying children. The first police officer on the scene, Sergeant Miller, initially thought he was interrupting a theatrical performance. It took him a moment to process the genuine terror in the faces of the crowd. The frantic gestures towards the boy hanging from the tree. Paramedics fought their way through the throng of stunned onlookers, their faces grim as they worked to get Leo down. But it was too late. The illusion had consumed its creator. Leo Carter was pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation was handed to Detective Isabella Rossi, a sharp, pragmatic woman who had seen her fair share of tragedy, but had a particular disdain for senseless loss. The initial assessment pointed to a tragic accident, a stunt gone wrong, a teenager's hubris leading to his own demise. The town of Oakhaven, shrouded in a fog of grief and disbelief, seemed to accept this narrative. It was easier to mourn an accident than to confront the possibility of something more sinister lurking beneath the surface of their idyllic community. Leo was a risk taker this time. His luck had simply run out. Rossi, however, was not convinced. Accidents were messy, but they usually left a clear trail of failure: a frayed rope, a broken buckle, a miscalculation. Here, everything seemed to be in perfect working order. The rope was brand new, the knots were secure, and the harness Leo was wearing under his costume, while unconventional, appeared robust. The primary challenge for Rossi was the sheer number of witnesses. Hundreds of people had seen Leo die, yet none had seen a crime. They were all part of the audience, their perceptions skewed by the expectation of a performance. The medical examiner's report confirmed the cause of death as asphyxiation by hanging, but it also noted faint bruising on Leo's wrists and ankles, marks that didn't quite align with a simple, tragic fall. They were subtle, almost negligible, but to Detective Rossi, they were a loose thread. She began her interviews with those closest to Leo. His parents were catatonic with grief, unable to provide any useful information. It was his friends who began to paint a more complex picture of the boy and the events leading up to that fatal night. Maya, his best friend, was consumed by a guilt so profound it was almost palpable. Through her tears, she explained the mechanics of the stunt. She told Rossi about Leo's obsession with perfection, how he had tested the rig dozens of times. Then there was Caleb, Leo's longtime rival. Caleb was a talented athlete, but he was always eclipsed by Leo's charisma and showmanship. He spoke of Leo with a thinly veiled resentment, calling the prank a desperate, childish plea for attention. His alibi was solid. He was on the other side of the square with a group of friends when it happened. But his animosity was a red flag Rossi couldn't ignore. The final piece of the social puzzle was Chloe, Leo's recent ex-girlfriend. Their breakup had been messy, and she admitted that Leo had been staging increasingly dramatic stunts to try and win her back. She feared that this final prank was his most desperate attempt yet. As Rossi pieced together the social dynamics of Leo's life, she saw a web of jealousy, teenage angst, and unrequited love. It was a volatile mix, and she suspected that somewhere within it lay the spark that had ignited this tragedy. The case was no longer about a simple accident. It was about a secret. Weeks turned into a month, and the case grew cold. The town settled into a somber winter. The vibrant memory of Halloween, now a gray, painful scar. The official cause of death remained accidental. A conclusion that satisfied the town's need for closure, but left a bitter taste in Detective Rossi's mouth. She couldn't shake the image of the bruises on Leo's wrists, the look of veiled hatred in Caleb's eyes, the crushing weight of Maya's unspoken guilt. The truth was there, buried under a town's collective grief, and she refused to let it lie. Rossi's obsession drove her back to the evidence, specifically the dozens of cell phone videos taken by the crowd that night. She spent countless hours in a dark room, watching the tragedy unfold from 100 different angles, her eyes straining for any detail she might have missed. She synced the videos, creating a fragmented 360-degree view of the final moments of Leo's life. The grainy footage was a chaotic blur of costumed faces, but Rossi watched it with a methodical patience, searching for a ghost in the machine. And then she saw it in a shaky video from a teenager standing near the back of the crowd. A flicker of movement at the base of the old oak tree, hidden in the deep shadows just outside the main spotlight. It was a figure hunched over for just a second. Moments before the platform dropped, the figure did something at ground level and then quickly melted back into the crowd. It was almost nothing, a digital smudge that could have been a trick of the light, but it was enough. Rossi spent 2 days working with the forensics lab to enhance the few frames of footage. The enhancement was grainy, but it provided 2 critical details. The figure was wearing a distinctive varsity jacket, one that Rossi recognized from Caleb's interview. And just before the figure stood up, it appeared to kick something small and metallic away from the base of the tree. It was the breakthrough she had been fighting for, but it wasn't enough to secure a warrant. She needed more than a shadow in a video. She needed to know what the figure was kicking. The key, she realized, was not with the rival, But with the best friend, Rossi brought Maya in for another interview. She didn't lead with accusations. Instead, she spoke of Leo, of his passion and his meticulous planning. She asked Maya gently if there was any detail, any part of the safety mechanism that she had left out. The girl's composure finally crumbled. With a gut-wrenching sob, she confessed the final secret of Leo's illusion. There was a failsafe, a foot-activated release pedal hidden under a pile of autumn leaves at the base of the tree. If anything went wrong, Leo could have stomped on it, and the harness would have instantly released, dropping him safely to the ground. On Halloween night, Maya had been tasked with ensuring the pedal was in place. But in the chaos and her own nervousness, she had forgotten to double-check it right before the performance. She had assumed it was there, hidden as planned. The information was a lightning bolt. Rossi now understood the bruises on Leo's wrists. They were from his desperate, futile struggle to free himself. He had been trying to reach for a release that wasn't there, kicking his feet for a pedal that had been moved. The accident was no accident. It was murder. Armed with Maya's testimony and the enhanced video, Rossi brought Caleb in again. This time, his arrogant demeanor was gone, replaced by a sullen fear. When Rossi presented him with the video and told him about the release pedal, his face went pale. He broke down, the confession tumbling out in a torrent of jealousy and regret. He admitted to seeing Leo set up the pedal earlier in the day, in a moment of spiteful impulse, wanting to see Leo's grand prank fail and humiliate him. He had kicked the pedal away into the darkness just before the show began. He never thought it would kill him. He just wanted Leo to fail. The arrest of Caleb sent a new shockwave through Oakhaven. The grief for Leo was now mingled with a horrified sense of betrayal. The narrative of a tragic accident was shattered, replaced by the uglier truth of a malicious act. The upcoming trial divided the community. Some saw Caleb as a cold-blooded killer who had callously watched his rival die. Others saw him as a foolish teenager whose stupid, jealous prank had collided with another, more dangerous one, resulting in a tragedy that he never intended. The line between a prank and a crime had become the central question. The trial was a somber affair. The prosecution portrayed Caleb as a calculating, jealous rival who deliberately removed a vital piece of safety equipment. They replayed the haunting cell phone videos for the jury, pointing out Caleb's presence in the crowd, watching impassively as Leo struggled for his life. Maya's testimony was heartbreaking, her voice barely a whisper as she described the failsafe pedal that she believed would have saved her friend's life. She carried the weight of her own small role in the tragedy, a burden that was evident in her every word. Caleb's defense argued that it was a case of reckless endangerment from all sides. They painted Leo as an arrogant show-off, performing a dangerous stunt without proper authorization or professional oversight. They claimed Caleb's action was a stupid, immature prank, but not a murderous one. He had no way of knowing, they argued, that the small metal pedal was the only thing keeping Leo alive. He was a boy who made a terrible mistake, not a monster who committed murder. The jury was left to decide the intent behind the action. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The lesser charge acknowledged Caleb's lack of intent to kill, but held him responsible for Leo's death. He was sentenced to 10 years in a juvenile correctional facility, a sentence that satisfied no one. For Leo's family, it was a gross injustice. For Caleb's family, it was the destruction of their son's life. For the town of Oakhaven, it was a painful, ambiguous end to a story that had stolen their innocence. The immediate aftermath was a town steeped in bitterness and recrimination. Friendships were broken, families were ostracized, and the once unifying spirit of Halloween became a source of division and painful memories. The annual haunted trail was canceled indefinitely. Leo's family eventually moved away, unable to bear living in the shadow of the tree where their son had died. Caleb served his time, and upon his release, never returned to Oakhaven, disappearing into the anonymity of a larger city. The story became a dark chapter in the town's history, a wound that never quite healed. The legacy of the hanging prank is now woven into the fabric of Oakhaven's identity. The story is a cautionary tale, told to new generations of teenagers as a grim reminder of the consequences of jealousy and the thin veil between a joke and a tragedy. The great oak tree, once a symbol of community and celebration, now stands as an unofficial monument to the boy who died there. No lights or decorations adorn its branches in October anymore. It is left in shadow, a silent, somber sentinel guarding a painful memory. But some say the tree is not entirely silent. The legend has taken on a life of its own, evolving from a tragic true crime story into a genuine ghost story. Residents who live near the town square report strange occurrences on the nights leading up to Halloween. They speak of the sound of a teenage boy's confident laughter echoing from the square, only to be cut short by a sudden, horrifying, choking sound. Others have reported their lights flickering or their electronics shorting out at the exact time of Leo's death. The most chilling tales, however, come from those who dare to walk through the town square late on Halloween night. They claim that if you look up at the highest branch of the old oak tree, you can sometimes see a faint, shimmering outline of a boy, a spectral figure swinging gently in the breeze. They say it's Leo's spirit, tethered to the spot of his betrayal, forever reenacting the final moments of his performance. It is not a terrifying or malevolent ghost, but a sorrowful one, a permanent echo of a life cut short. The story of Leo Carter is not just about a prank gone wrong. It's about the darkness that can fester in the human heart, the corrosive nature of jealousy, and the unbearable weight of guilt. It's about how a single, impulsive act of malice can unravel lives and haunt a community for years to come. The case may be officially closed, but the questions it raised continue to linger in the crisp autumn air of Oakhaven. Was it justice? Could it have been prevented? These are the questions that keep the ghost of Leo Carter alive. The shadow of the old oak tree now stretches further than it ever did before, casting a pall over the town's most cherished tradition. Children in Oakhaven grow up with a different understanding of Halloween. For them, it is not just about candy and costumes. It is also about the boy in the tree. The story has become a part of their local folklore, as real to them as any historical event. The line between fact and fiction has blurred, creating a modern legend steeped in authentic tragedy. Maya, the girl who carried the secret of the failsafe, eventually found a way to channel her grief. She became a vocal advocate for safety in youth events, sharing Leo's story not as a ghost story, but as a lesson in responsibility. She never forgave Caleb, but she also never forgave herself, living a life dedicated to preventing the kind of reckless tragedy that had defined her youth. Her work is a quiet, constant penance, a tribute to the friend she lost. And what of the town itself? Oakhaven has tried to move on. They have new festivals, new traditions. They have tried to reclaim the town square, building a new playground and planting a memorial garden. But no amount of new life can fully erase the memory of what happened there. Every October, as the leaves begin to turn, a quiet solemnity descends upon the town. Doors are locked a little earlier, and parents hold their children a little closer. The ghost of Halloween past is a permanent resident. The final, lingering question is one that haunts Oakhaven to this day. Is the spectral figure seen in the tree truly the ghost of Leo Carter, a spirit unable to find peace? Or is it something else entirely, a manifestation of the town's collective guilt, a specter woven from the threads of memory, regret, and the unspoken fear that such a tragedy could happen again? Perhaps the ghost is not just Leo's, but Oakhaven's itself, a town forever haunted by the night. A Halloween prank became a horrifying reality. So the next time you enjoy a haunted house or a scary story on Halloween, remember the line. Remember that behind every mask is a person, and behind every illusion is a reality that can be dangerously fragile. The story of Oakhaven serves as a chilling reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not the ones from myths or legends, but the ones that live within ourselves: jealousy, resentment, and the terrible, unforeseen consequences of a single fatal choice.